Greetings all. Dr. Raphael X here with another video with my friend Dr. Thomas Michaud. And before anything else, let us begin with the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, remembering our baptism in the Lord. So please subscribe to this video, click on the like button, leave a comment, share this video, notifications, all that good stuff. All right, so today we're going to talk about three hot topics. The first one we'll talk about is Christian nationalism, AI, and then environmentalism if we have time. If not, we'll just do a second video on that, but we hope to get at least to the first two. So Christian nationalism, definitely a hot topic, a kind of a boogeyman to the cultural left. But really it's understood in vague. It's different people have defined it in vague terms, we can say, because first of all, even nationalism itself is seen as a danger today. Actually, people, you see certain scholars, even leftist scholars, they blame the disintegration of Europe not on globalism but on nationalism, interestingly. And definitely Christianity has been the boogeyman because, as Jesus Christ said, the prince of this world is Satan. So really, of course, Christianity is going to have that stigma, if you will, this worldly stigma. So maybe we can define our terms. What do we mean by Christian nationalism? Are we talking about what kind of Constantine established? Now, there's a Professor O'Malley, who's a scholar. He wrote that Vatican II ended the Constantinian order in the socio-political realm of this kind of this integralist spirit. Is that what we're talking about? Are we talking about integralism? Are we talking about a confessional state? Because you're seeing that now become more popular, where Christian nationalism is equated to a state confessing Christianity. So what are we talking about? How are we defending it? Because it's something that should be defended, the basis of our values, as Benedict XVI has shown. Christianity is written in the Constitution in Europe, is part of the root. By definition, Europe is Christian. So you cannot separate the two. So maybe we can make this connection. We talk about a little about Christian nationalism, but take it away, Thomas, because I know you are the expert on this case.
Yes, thank you, Raphael, and a pleasure to be doing another video with you. I hope we get some looks and likes down the road. Christian nationalism. You're right. It is a vague term. Currently, it is a fear-mongering stimulus by the left. The term itself, Christian nationalism, is used as a pejorative blanket term to discredit all efforts to enter the public square, enter the political arena, make claims based on anything Christian. Their buzz term in regard to their agenda is fear the Christo-fascist state. The Christo-fascist state, which Christian nationalism promotes. Now, again, to say that is hyperbolic is putting it mildly. This is not a kind of movement which is aiming for that Christian fascist theocracy, not by any means. But it gets more complicated, in fact, in regard to what exactly Christian nationalism is accused of supporting for the sake of this Christian fascism. Natural law is one of their primary targets. They consider natural law to be an abomination, natural law to be an oppressive form of thought, a form of legalism that, in the words of some of the writers um, um, about Christian fascism, endorsing it, it is a way of repressing sexual identity, repress sexual morality, an attempt to control the lives of citizens, make them lockstep with Christian law. But what is so common with the left, they have no sense of the history of our nation and why natural law is integral to that history. I want to spend a few moments reading from the Declaration of Independence
Mhm.
and from a few other points. So please allow me that.
Yes,
Um,
for
this
sure.
is the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which interpret them to the separation. Then it moves into the famous words: we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. These rights are not issued by any government.
Mhm.
These rights issue from a power higher than any government, and government should be just a means which ensures that these rights are kept inviolate for all. So natural law is intrinsic to God created nature, as our founders clearly expressed it in the Declaration of Independence. Its understanding and respect natural law are foundational for preserving the unalienable rights which all humans possess. Now, the left may recognize that. They can't help but recognize it in the Declaration of Independence. But their claim is that the Declaration of Independence is not the Constitution. The Constitution is what defines the principles, protocols, procedures for our democratic republic. But in the preamble of the Constitution, we have an expression of the God given origins of natural rights and natural law with a simple statement, profound but simple. I'm quoting the preamble to the Constitution now. The purpose of the Constitution is, quote, to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Clearly, for the founders of our nation, it was obvious that faith in God and his creation was a blessing that must be acknowledged in launching their new nation. The word blessing, I think, distinctly points out that our nation's constitutional principles, protocols, procedures, as defined, are blessings founded upon the God given natural law. Christian nationalism, it's claimed, if you believe in God given unalienable rights, if you believe in natural law, if you believe that the U.S. was founded by any sort of Christian principles, you're a Christo-fascist,
Yeah, no, that's
aiming to transform our nation from a democracy to a Christian theocracy. It doesn't matter if you're an evangelical Protestant or Catholic Christian, affirming fundamental beliefs in the Declaration and the preamble to the Constitution is sufficient to be labeled a Christian nationalist.
yeah.
But this movement
No, no, keep going, keep going.
is, yeah, but this movement, they claim, of Christian nationalism is not widespread. It's not a thunderous movement. You know, back in the late 1970s, there was a movement led by the minister Jerry Falwell, the moral majority. It gained political prominence and it contributed substantially to the first presidential victory of Ronald Reagan. Christian nationalism is not a movement of that proportion, Raphael. It is much more limited. Nonetheless, because it is endorsing basic Christian principles rooted in natural law, it's a threat. And it has to be opposed. It has to be exposed for the kind of autocracy it promotes. And of course, all of that is exaggeration and nonsense. Um,
Yeah, no, that's
people like, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, yeah,
People like Andre Watkins
no, I think there's a little lag here, but no, I was just gonna say that
warns that if Christian national,
I think
yeah,
there's
go
a
ahead.
little pause here, but I think a little laggy. Hopefully, it gets a little better. But no, I was just going to say that since the demon cannot directly attack God, he can't in the supernatural realm. He hasn't been so successful, though he does attack us, obviously, in our supernatural lives. We can say he attacks the natural realm. So, and how do we know natural law through reason? And this is of, even though natural law is outside, we can say the physical boundaries of the Catholic Church, of course, but it's really a heritage of Catholicism. It's really only the Catholic Church that defends reason. And that's why I don't know if you know Timothy Gordon wrote a book, and you may not agree with it, but he said that the United States is wired Catholic, even though it's nominally Protestant. So it's nominally Protestant, is currently functioning in a secular way, but it's wired Catholic because the Declaration is imbued with natural law. So more of Christian nationalism is really because Christianity seems to fall non-Catholic Christianity it can seem to fall into a theocracy, and that's why a lot of the Protestant Reformation, the Protestant Rebellion, it was very popular with the princes because they saw that they were able to kind of usurp, in a sense, the church's power. So you in Protestantism, you don't see that realm very clearly distinguished, as opposed to Catholicism, the entire history of the church uh, deals with the church defending their rights, right? More dealing with the supernatural realm. And the even in the natural realm, the state is a modern term, but we can say the state defending their rights, because sometimes the church did kind of usurp some of the rights of the state. So you don't have theocracy. Their fear is totally unfounded that there would be a Christian a theocracy, at least in a Catholic theocracy, doesn't exist. We don't believe in that. We believe in the Catholic values, as you alluded to, instilling through natural law, right? Instilling the animating, we can say rather, the civil society, animating the laws. And because we've gotten away from natural law, now what is the moral theory that has replaced that is consequentialism, without a doubt. Now things based
Yes.
on whatever has the better consequences, that is what is good. There's no more good and evil in themselves. There's nothing. It depends on the consequences they produce. And this is
And
very
the
dangerous
more and the moral norms
position. Hmm. Yeah.
and the moral norms for those consequences um, are how should I put it, fluid. What
Exactly.
counts as a good consequence usually is a matter of the prevailing wind of political agenda at the
Right,
time.
right. But I want to point
And
you to no, I'm sorry. Let me just
they can't they
go ahead, go ahead.
can't they cannot the left cannot abide a well done, knowable, and articulable by reason moral principles such as natural law. It is it is for them an enemy uh, uh, because it restricts, as you pointed out, the kind of autocratic um, desire they have to establish their leftist kingdom, so to speak. Um, um, Natural law has, in recent history, has been kicked around tremendously by the left. It is a source of fear and terror for them. They've got to, in one way or another, suppress it. And I think of when Clarence Thomas in the early '90s, but was being reviewed for a Supreme. Clarence Thomas is still undergoing all sorts of attacks, but he
Hmm.
was being reviewed for the um, SCOTUS position. Um, Joe Biden at the time was on the review committee. He might have even been chair of it. I'm not positive of that. But um, natural law was brought up because Clarence Thomas was an advocate of natural law and in his judicial philosophy. Um, Biden says, well, there's that troubling natural law thing. The good Catholic Joe Biden has the troubling natural law thing. Um, one critic at the time claimed, and Thomas accepts some archaic natural law kind of theory. I mean, it was called archaic. Um, Thomas himself said, and this is interesting, Raphael.
Hmm.
Thomas himself said, I want to quote him here to get the words accurate, because he consistently affirmed that there's a higher law. Okay,
Right.
um, and he stated that American politics and the American Constitution are unintelligible without the Declaration of Independence, and the Declaration is unintelligible without the notion of a higher law by which
Hmm.
we fallible men and women can take our bearings. That higher law is the God ordained natural law with the natural unalienable rights
Right.
that serve as its core. Um,
Right, right. No, that's
it's not an
fascinating.
archaic legal theory.
No, that's
Yeah.
and the consequence. The really is what we're saying is that if you attack natural law, you're in the political realm. Um, well, defending natural law rather they would equate that with Christian nationalism. So they themselves are showing that really it's only Christianity, Catholicism specifically, that is defending nature. So now, with this extreme individualism that's being promoted, they want to rewrite marriage and the natural family, right? Or enshrine abortion and even, IVF rights as human rights. So it's this individualism that doesn't have to, basically a relativism, doesn't have to conform to anything. So nature has become a rigid type of imposition, imposing moral theory that nature. And so this is, I mean, it's tremendous. So it's this freedom from reality, which we talked about. But I wanted to show you this or just mention it, this article from the National Catholic Reporter. Some call it National Catholic Distorter because it's really not
Yeah.
it's not that Catholic. But they say that it's not Catholic to even use that well, to even Christian nationalism as the concept of it and the reality is opposed to Catholicism, because the way they define Christian nationalism is that one is exclusively like you are devoted to your nation, exclusively to other nations, and even excluding other devotions like to your faith, which that is not. How can we harmonize devotion to nation, right, in a way which is the virtue of patriotism, and devotion to our faith? Like, why are these not mutually exclusive, as some people propose? A lot of people don't propose this, but I thought this was an interesting argument that their definitions, I think, are faulty here. But I don't know if you want to. Is there a confusion here? I mean, can you have is devotion to the nation and devotion to the church, is that even right to say? Or if it is that is there a contradiction there?
One of the in traditional Christianity, one of its gems, and you alluded to this earlier, is that there is a universality, regardless of specific faith, to the moral foundation of natural law. Natural law is accessible by reason, regardless of faith. Um, um, and I think that's why it has perdured for so long. It is one major aspect of the perennial philosophy, indeed. And for those who don't understand that, that the natural light of reason can put us in touch with, enable us to discover natural law. Okay, if you don't understand that, then you don't understand the background, the heritage of Catholicism and traditional Christianity. Uh, um, so those in the National Catholic disorder are, I think, just ignorant of
Right.
the history, the heritage of their own faith. You don't have to be a Catholic to access rationally natural law. Clearly, um, most of the founders were not Catholics. Um, Jefferson, Franklin, etc., Washington, they were not Catholics, but natural law was vital to them. And what they knew with that was that there's a higher order than the government. Of course, the left does not want a higher order than the government. The state is the be all and end all of law, of rights, of human behavior. Uh, they don't want that higher order to in any way eclipse the authority of the state.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, that's spot on. Yeah, very, very interesting. The nationalism itself is that, yeah, it's not necessarily opposed uh, to Catholicism at all. Nationalism is well, so can is there a nationalism to fear though? Is there anything in the complaints, if you will, or rather criticisms of nationalism, like this whole nationalist versus globalist type of view? Is there legitimate concerns for nationalism, or is nationalism kind of a good antidote for what we're seeing with globalism? I don't know your views on that. I mean, it's more of a political question, socio-political, as opposed to religious, but I don't know where your views are on that. And then we could pass on to AI.
well, there's no need. We don't have to confuse, and we should not confuse um, nationalism, which can be problematic to be sure,
Hmm.
um, with patriotism.
Right.
I strive to be a patriot. In doing so, I accept, with limitations, American exceptionalism. Our system of government, constitutional republic, has been the most successful experiment, I think it's been proven out, in history. Um, Nationalism, because of its European roots, does get problematic. I mean, there are so many different versions, connotations of the term, but we can be American patriots and firmly accept, believe that, yeah, America is exceptional.
Right.
Exceptionalism isn't uh, intrinsically pejorative in any way. No, and I think that's the problem. You know, um, all patriots aren't necessarily nationalists, but all patriots are, to some degree, I think, exceptionalists in regard to their nations. Because there has to be something you believe in as an American. Um, our heritage, our founding, those basic principles. Um, there has to be something there which spurs and enriches the patriotism.
That's right.
Um, I would it's clear exam. You know, my dad was a World War II vet.
Hmm.
Fought for during the entire European theater,
Uh-huh.
and it's clear exceptionalism was clearly what he believed.
Right.
Um,
Right. Right.
exceptionally, exceptionalism includes, yeah, twice in the 20th century, we enabled the free world to survive twice in one century on a major, major scale. World War One and Two. Um, that's part of exceptionalism. Our economic success based upon free markets, and I emphasize the word free, um, is part of our exceptionalism. We're not a government regulated, controlled economy, free market economy. Um, that defines or contributes to the exceptional nature of our nation. Um,
Right. Right.
yeah,
No,
so
and it's
I
very
think
much
that
rooted in.
nationalism can,
No, go ahead.
please,
No, I was going
no,
to say that it's very much rooted in natural law. Very much. I mean, this stems from. You can say these are without being consequentialism, but these are consequences, right? Logical consequences of enforcing natural law, which again is defended by our Christian heritage. So it's so do you see a danger here? And maybe this is kind of a good segue to AI. Do you see a danger here of going away from natural law, going away with
Oh yeah,
to
yeah.
this artificial view because of this consequentialist view, the consequent whatever gives us the highest amount of benefit, which is also utilitarian, that's the best. So if you want to kind of make that kind of if you want to pass on to the AI,
eh,
or if you want to comment something on the topic we're doing before, uh, go ahead if you want to make that connection.
there is a certain, I think, connection there. AI gets very, very complex. In and of itself, it's complex, but um, for many other reasons, to be sure. But AI now is thriving because of a free market. It may be an aspect of our nation globally, which does require, and I put this in quotes, some sort of regulation, because doing is quite nefarious at times, without us even realizing it. So that although we would be generally supportive of the free market, when it comes to the development and use of AI in various different forms, and we can get to that, um, there has to be some control. Because if we don't exercise some control, well, we'll fall into the warning or become victim to the warning of someone like Max Tegmark, a developer, software, and in a sense, a kind of a technology philosopher of technology. He claims that the problem with technology and AI in particular is that it has grown so much that it has, and I'm paraphrasing here, it has outdistanced our wisdom to manage it successfully. It's
Hmm.
grown beyond our ability to be prudent stewards of what it is. Um,
Huh.
this is, I think, a real. This is a threat. Uh, um, um, Obviously, it's not AI itself, in a sense, which is a threat, but in another sense, it is AI itself, which is a threat. And this becomes an issue within the philosophy of technology. Um, and I could go on with that a little bit if you would like at this point, because it is critical, absolutely critical.
Yeah, no, sure, that sounds great. I mean, technology, techne, right? I mean, it comes from art or to make.
Yeah,
So
right,
it's
exactly.
yeah, it was. I
Technique.
think it was originally supposed to, at least from the Greek philosophy, because that's where the name comes from. It's Greek. It's supposed to imitate nature. So it's supposed to help man, but imitating nature somehow. Um, but obviously be useful. But yeah, with the again with the AI, it the danger is maybe not the danger is in itself, which in a sense it is, as you mentioned, but it's because there's a decline in virtue and there's an increase in technology and decline in virtue. It actually spells for disaster for us that we're not really, our moral sense has died down and the technology is increasing. I mean, what are we not capable of? And the consequences can be tremendous for that. But yeah, go ahead, go into the technology. Um,
Yeah, I I'll go on with that here because no technology is neutral. Albert Tyke said, about now almost 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, Albert Tyke, a philosopher of technology. Technology is not neutral. It's not, as we often believe, just something. And it has meaning, and it's good or bad. Its uses are productive or regressive, depending upon how we employ it. No. Technology, an artifact, a technological artifact, in and of itself, has a certain design that can affect human behavior. Let me put it this way. The term used, and I broaden this term outside of the field of philosophy of technology, because I think it's such an illustrative description of what technology can do. The term is valence. Technologies have valences. Let me define that. A technological valence is a tendency that technology has. It's intrinsic to the technology to influence individual or group behaviors in certain ways. A valence, a technological valence, is a tendency the technological artifact, the thing, has to influence individual and or group behaviors in certain ways. This is why technologies are not neutral. There are valences to AI technologies which are alarming, and we'll talk about those in more detail. But let me go on with what I mean by this technological valence. Technologies, in regard to their very design and what they're capable of doing, they include the mores, even in a certain regard, the morals of the designers, and how they emerge in society reflects those mores and moral principles in many ways. Now, sometimes these valences are called unforeseen consequences. Unforeseen consequences. They can be foreseen consequences as well. I mean, the designer of the technology is looking to influence behavior in a certain way. So they're explicit. Other times they're unforeseen. Sometimes called these foreseen or unforeseen secondary consequences. This is what the valences can stimulate. Let me give a few examples just to get clearer on this. Consider the difference between a boy's bicycle and a girl's bicycle. When I was a kid, a boy's bicycle had that bar which went straight across from the handlebar to the seat, straight across. The girl's bicycle had a kind of slope, to it.
Right.
For boys, when you stop short on your bicycle, that could be painful sometimes. But why? Why was it like that? Why did you have the slope with the girl's bicycle straight across with the boy's bicycle? It was a design, something that was explicitly foreseen when bicycles first became more and more popular. They thought it was unseemly. Mores should prohibit it for women to mount a bicycle by swinging their legs over it. Okay, that was unseemly. That was a mores of the time. So they made the sloping bar. It was a way, perhaps one could even call it sexist, built right into the design of bicycles. Interesting. Back in the 60s, they even began to produce clothing for kids on bicycles, women on bicycles. There was today they're called capris, but there was a style of pants called pedal pushers. You wouldn't remember this.
I've heard I've heard of yeah, pedal.
Pedal pushers, they were called. And they were specifically that. When girls began to wear pants, some pants were designed particularly, they were a 3/4 length. So, pedal pushers. So they wouldn't get anything caught in the chain or the wheel or anything of the bike, but they didn't have to, swing their wearing a dress or a skirt, swing their legs over the bike. I mean, these built right into the technology. So the technology was, to a degree anyway, in a sense, balanced to protect a certain view. Consider the difference between a Western horse saddle and an English horse saddle. I mean, it's the same idea. Unseemly for women to ride on a kind of Western saddle where they rode, they stride over the horse. No, unseemly. And of course, the Western saddle and cowboys, cowgirls, that eventually changed all that, and the mores in society began to change. But that was the valence. Consider the screen we're using now. There's a valence to the screen. And I've had managers in the work I've done on leadership and ethics in businesses, corporations, and so on. I have had managers, particularly of call centers, like an AT&T call center, where all day long the employee they have the headphones on and they're talking into a screen. Okay, they're in their separate cubicles, talking into that screen, and that screen, in a sense, becomes a kind of there's a kind of hypnotic one-to-one connection with the screen.
Yeah.
They can kind of shut out everything else around them, but that's their job. And the managers have said to me repeatedly, when I've worked for such call centers and dealing with questions of leadership and so on, there's no camaraderie among our people. They just don't seem to talk to one another. They really don't know one another. It's just that one-on-one with the screen. The screen has a tendency to individuate. The screen has a tendency to separate us. We get into this screen headspace, and the rest of the world kind of falls aside. You can see it. I remember when my children were smaller, and we would put in a video and have pizza night, movie night. We'd be watching the movie, and we all be talking about, oh, look at that, that's nice. But after a period of time, that kind of conversation among the family would just disappear, and we were all into this individualized headspace, watching the screen. More or less evokes that individuation from us.
Yeah.
That's a valence. The screen, the audio-visual representation on the screen. And this is why, for instance, AI with smartphones, etc., young Gen Zs, those 18 to 29 and younger now, are, and it's a serious problem, addiction to social media, TikTok, Instagram, and so on. The statistics regarding such addiction are alarming.
That's right.
Alarming.
That's right.
How does that? Well, they're individuated by the screen. They're in a different reality, so to speak, and the rest of the world is kind of just, you know, fades away. The screen has that, its valence towards that. Now, I don't think that was a foreseen valence at first. Now it is clearly exploited in so many ways on social media. Um,
Yeah.
and, you read these surveys conducted of uh, teenagers and early 20s and so on, and they are claiming that they feel so alone, and
Right.
there's
Right.
a certain amount of isolation. Where is that coming from? Well, it's coming from the individuated relationship they have with the screen through social
Right.
media.
Right. Right. Right.
That, I mean, this is actually serious. It
Yeah.
affects suicide rates and all kinds of mental illness, depression, serious stuff. Um,
Have you
and
heard of, I'm
when
sorry,
AI,
have you heard of
go
like
ahead.
the whole phenomenon of like sex bots people are having and even emotional relationships with robots and even sexual relationships with
Yes,
robots. So that's I mean it's it's so yeah, it's before like you were saying um kind of how artificial should enhance nature. Like that's what it's supposed to be. But now we're seeing the artificial replacing nature, and obviously it has its effects because it's going against nature. Remember, the defense of nature is
it,
the key
it,
here. With nationalism and with here, we're defending. This is like the underlying really point that we're trying to make is that nature, you can't go against nature. Right? You can't go, and I don't know if you're familiar with Heidegger's phenomenology of technology, because he's like probably the main, because I know you study a little bit of
yes,
phenomenology, and he
he
wrote
gets
a lot
he's a
on
little
it.
bit romanticized. Yeah, I know. He was very
So he wrote,
taken with
which
some of
is
the 19th century poets and so on.
he's really interesting. He wrote that
But
really like, old technology is to uncover the truth. So older technology is there's a particular goal, but it would imitate nature somehow, which is true. It is general definition of technology, traditional definition of technology. But now, instead of having that passive aspect, technology, and this goes to a lot what you're saying, contemporary technology manipulates more. It's more active. It's like a windmill, right? That's more passive. A windmill would need the wind to work, but a dam would be more active in actually stopping the water. So that's like the comparison with between the older technology and the newer one. Um, so really
it
technology
recreates
being
its
active.
own nature.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
that's
The
what he's defending. Your
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
And nature becomes what we know as nature becomes a construct of that technology. And the big question, Raphael, and this is something that Heidegger never thought of because, again, some of his stuff on technology, I think, goes back to the 19th century romantic writers and poets,
Right.
Hölderlin and others that he favored. Um, um, will we ever have sentient machines? This is the question. This is the big and capital BIG question of AI today. Will we see uh, computer consciousness, AI sentience? Um, there are those who believe, like David Hanson, the founder and leader of Hanson Robotics. He believes firmly, yeah, he he suggests that we've got to make ourselves ready to welcome a new species,
Right.
the sentient robot, huh? You know, this is science fiction where we have the androids, the simulacra, the automatons, etc., etc. He believes firmly that we will have a new species, and kind of like Pascal's noble wager, it's better not to believe than not believe, because it's better for us to believe than not believe that we will have these uh, sentient AI bots, okay? Because if we don't believe it, then we will not have a world that is gifted, improved by their presence. But if we do believe it, we will be able to work cooperatively with them by recognizing this kind of new species. It is incredible,
Right.
incredible. And part of the problem there, and you mentioned it when you talk about sex bots, et cetera, and AI. Some people, falling in love literally with the AI so-called voice. A big part of one of the philosophers of technology, near Escovitz, makes an interesting, fascinating point in regard to this. He claims that the question of AI sentience is a red herring.
Hmm.
What we should really be focused on is, how do we ever get to a point where we could believe or think or entertain the notion that there will be sentient AI things? Huh? How do how have we arrived at that point? And I believe that one of the main reasons why we've arrived at that point, where we're thinking seriously, yeah, maybe it will be a new kind of species, and so, and we got to be tolerant and accepting this new kind of. One of the reasons why is because, and this is part of the valence of this AI tech, huh? Um, it is intentionally designed anthropomorphically.
Hmm.
These AI robots, like Hanson's famous Sophia robot, is intentionally designed anthropomorphically with a pleasant, soothing voice, and that can be male or female. Um, in terms of compassion, Hanson believes firmly that you can have a compassionate consciousness with AI, a compassionate consciousness with AI, where they will say the appropriate things to soothe you and express care for troubles and worries. In any way they can, they will be designed to assuage your fears. Yes, um, the more AI is packaged, and we've got to remember and recognize that this is only a packaging. The more it is packaged anthropomorphically, okay, the more we will be susceptible to thinking, yes, we've got a new species emerging here. As some of the more extreme of these AI developers maintain. Yeah, we have a conscious entity. But so again, in response to what Escovitz questions, it's just the packaging. The anthropomorphized packaging is what it's a valence which is um, influencing us to believe this is human to some degree,
Right.
at some level.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
this is
perplexing.
worrisome.
imitation to replacement, and and it's really a love that's based on not objective reality, but purely sentimentalism. It's kind of like when
Right.
you love well, animals are still natural, but when you love animals more than humans, again, it's not based on objectivity that this person has an infinite worth. Even though animals do treat us nicer sometimes, or many times. But with this AI, especially now that AI can, especially with these bots, they can memorize, not, yeah, they load in their memory the conversation, so they remember your likes and dislikes. So they're very attractive in conversation. They're very advanced, these new bots. So people are feeling, wow, this bot actually cares for me. So they're loving something unjustifiably that ought not to be loved. It's really much with it goes in line with Saint Augustine when he says that once we love our love has to be objective when it's first we love God as we ought to love God, and then we love right what's made in the image and likeness of God, right? As for God's sake. So it's kind of there's a hierarchy of love, but it's based on that objective reality. So this notion also of consciousness and intelligence. So some people say artificial intelligence is an oxymoron, which it is in many respects, because intelligence does require some type of at least a intra cause in a sense that the cause has to be imminent, right? There has to be, it can't come from outside of you, right? That's the problem. The intelligence is something that is brought into, it's made by the person, it's invented, as opposed to the characteristics of living things. And this is the whole problem with posthumanism too. They want to reassess the categories of living consciousness from nature to artificial. So again, it's attack on
Right.
nature. But the thing is, the very
Yeah.
characteristics of life have these immaterial, immanent powers that characterize life. That's why something's alive, and even an animal can realize that this thing's alive, this thing is not, because it's moving as an intra power, a power that it has of its own. It wasn't programmed to have it. But now with AI, you see this with chess too. Chess is no one can beat the chess engines, by the way, because not only are they programmed, they were originally programmed, but now with the algorithms, they're able to make their own decisions and deduce, using logic. So they're extremely logical. So now chess, no one can even touch the engine. You make a move, they make a move like Alpha Zero or Stockfish, and no one knows why that move makes no sense actually, but it makes sense
It's
like a
got
hundred moves ahead. So it's
it's
I
become
remember
so
when
with
yeah,
chess. It's become so beyond Big Blue, as they used to say, and Boris Spassky playing the computer. Yes, that has changed, but part of the problem is that we can't discriminate that this AI bot, and the famous Sophia from David Hansen is appears like a woman, etc. And it's a physical bot, huh?
and feels like a
Not
woman
just
too,
a
by the way.
computer voice. What's that?
Feels like a woman, feels like a woman. Like
Yes,
they made it
yeah,
synthetic skin or something.
right. But again, it's anthropomorphized to the max.
Right.
Um, the valence is to make it's a intentional design to make us think that this is human. But the issue is that because we really don't have a sense of who and what we are as human persons by nature, okay, um, acting within nature, in possession of a soul with the intellect, with the spiritual faculties of intellect and free will, we don't have a sense of that. What we are immersed in, however, is a culture of mechanism. A culture of mechanism. It's that culture of mechanism which we can't even see above or get out of, so to speak. We're trapped in this culture of mechanism, and as such, I mean, we are vulnerable to looking at a sophisticated bot as, yeah, this is a conscious entity, huh? Descartes gave us criteria for differentiating between a person and an automaton. Um, 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 it said in terms of the use of this is from Descartes now, Discourse on Method. He said first criterion is that we could recognize an automaton, and he used the word automaton as such because it would not be able to reply appropriately to everything said in its presence. Okay, that's kind of obvious, I can only reply according to how it's programmed. So if this was an interactive verbal AI creature of some sort, and it's programmed for math, it's not going to be able to give you an interpretation of Shakespeare's Tempest or something. It's not programmed to talk about that. Okay, you see? So we'd be able to recognize that. And then he said, secondly, they'll never be able to show the capacities of universal reasoning, the ability to reason moving from one topic or one item to the next. No, they'll be limited by their design, as Descartes had it. Okay. Hansen and others believe that those criteria are already being surpassed. They believe that AI is quickly developing a kind of general reasoning. Chat GP2, some are claiming, has intimations of this, a kind of what Descartes talked about as universal reasoning. They're talking about they're already accomplishing a general reasoning where they can move from math to literary analysis to political predictions, etc. I mean, a kind of general reasoning in that respect. Yeah. And as that general reasoning, of which the AI is allegedly capable, packaged within an anthropomorphic container, so to speak, you begin to think more and more, this is human. Because for Descartes, and this is the culture of mechanism, there was no formal and final causality. Formal and final causalities are pretty much dismissed in Descartes' mechanism. We're stuck only with efficient and material causality. And remember, when he talked about this mind being something incorporeal, the physical body corporeal, what we ultimately have is that spirit ghost in a machine. The physical body operates as some kind of biological mechanism in Descartes' perspective. And at some point, the soul controls, it organizes, it operates that biological mechanism. Remember Descartes, when he was pressed to explain, and you find this in some of his works, such as The Passions of the Soul and others, in the discourse too. But when he was asked to really, explain, and he thought, I got to explain, how does a spiritual soul interact with a physical kind of mechanical body? He conjured up these things called animal spirits, which somehow had the incredible ability to morph from something incorporeal to something corporeal, and vice versa. So if you have an intention in your spiritual mind, your intellect, you can translate the animal spirits were in cavities around your pineal gland. Fascinating stuff this is. He had this all worked out. And so the mental, non-physical intention would cause the animal spirit to move through your veins and arteries, as he pointed, and move my hand. That's how the intention is physically realized, and it's the opposite for a sensation, huh? The animal spirits will be in a physical state, morph into a spirit, and they're the kind of the operating, because he have a sense of formal and final causality because he just dismissed those with traditional
Right.
metaphysics. He was stuck merely with material and efficient causality, but there's got to be an efficient cause. It can't be just material. It's got to be something that can change from material to spiritual and vice versa. That's what Descartes claimed. That was such an incredible explanation. It caught on a little bit, but mostly rejected. And ultimately, as sciences began to emerge, especially, anatomical sciences and behavioral sciences, psychological sciences, this notion that there is a kind of spirit ghost in our biomechanical bodies was simply dismissed. It just kind of lost favor. So, what was left? Mechanism, materialistic mechanism, efficient and material causality only, okay? Um, and no sense of what the soul is. The soul was lost. And when we lose a soul, the person is missing as well. In such a environment, in such a culture of, and today it's all mechanism. The sciences, biological sciences, psychological sciences, behavioral sciences, all mechanism. It's dominant. And given that, we have no sense that there's something more than just the physical. There is a spiritual base to who and what we are as human beings. This hylomorphic unity of body and soul. Body is integral to the soul, etc. But within the culture of mechanism, it's understandable that we would tend to think that an anthropomorphized AI type bot could be an emerging new species. We can't claim it doesn't have a soul. We can't even say that because we're not even sure what a soul is. If there is a soul, I mean, yeah, we've got these feelings, and sometimes we think what we know as a soul is just a bundle of our percepts and sentiments and so on. Whatever, this some kind of new age sentimentalism. Who knows? But we can't criticize AI because they'll never have a soul, because we don't even know what the soul is nor what it can do. And a real, besides the missing soul and the lost soul in our culture today, freedom becomes a real question,
That's right.
because in the culture of mechanism, there is no freedom.
Freedom.
There is no free will.
That's why it's attached to the
We
soul,
can't have
freedom, and the soul hand in hand.
hand in hand. We become more and more prone to be controlled in regard to our behavior, what we could think is moral or immoral, by the state, by the courts,
That's right.
especially the courts these days. Freedom isn't an issue hardly. I mean, we talk about liberty, but we don't. What is the metaphysical foundation for that in human nature? It's gone, pretty much. There is no psychology class, biology class, sociology, or economic class in college which will tell you that yes, you possess a free will.
Hmm.
It may be a spiritual faculty, but it is a free will, and there are good arguments to defend it. I mean, we could go on to that, to anti kind of mechanistic materialism, good arguments, but we don't know what the alternative is.
That's right.
We've got a generation which is clueless when it comes to what is freedom. They may be all about liberty and protest and this is right to this, right to that, but they really don't know what freedom is because there's no foundation for freedom. And when there's no foundation for freedom, when I was one of the, I want to end, this quite issue of freedom, the loss of freedom. I was for a time teaching down as a Fulbright professor in Rio de Janeiro. I was teaching a graduate course um, on uh, um, various topics, political thought and so on. It was kind of a grab bag there. Wonderful experience. I had a student. She was a PhD student, older. She, in fact, was the university's that section of the university's librarian. Teresa, her name was Teresa. And one day after class, she says, "Oh, professor, we need to talk." So we went into the cafe, sat down, we're having some coffee. She says to me, "Explain to me why you Americans are so committed to freedom." She says, "But when I look at books, textbooks from from America in psychology and other sociology and other areas," she says, all of there is no freedom.
Hmm.
She says it's behaviorism, stimulus response mainly. She says she very astute. She says it's it's all mechanism. There is no freedom.
Wow.
She says, and then she warns me, and I thought this was so like alarming. It really made me think. She said, America will lose freedom. It
Hmm.
will lose freedom if that's all it's taught. And it's true. We don't know what freedom is,
That's right.
which is why we can't really defend the importance of a free market economy, the, the freedom to be able to pursue happiness, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's it's more than just the distinction between positive and negative civil rights. Leave me alone rights and what can the government do for me kind of rights.
Right.
Um, Much more than that. Freedom is much more than that. It's got a metaphysical foundation
That's right.
of which most of our culture is entirely unaware.
That's
Um,
right. And without that metaphysical foundation, of course, you fall into determinism. I mean, that's what it is. And even you've seen this even in criminal justice and legal theory, where even criminals are kind of they're not imputed their crime.
Victims.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
victims, or they're just exterior circumstances influence. They're not individual moral agents at all because of this lack of freedom. So it's unfortunate. But I do want to point out that there seems to be a pushback, though, at least with the whole mechanistic mentality and AI and we can end with environmentalism here. Environmentalism in a religious sense. Now you might refer to environmentalism in a different sense, but I'm referring it to more in this pagan sense, where it's where you literally see this monistic view, this pantheistic view that no, God is here, and you see this actually permeating in certain spheres in the church, where I mean it's unheard of. I mean the Pope wrote an encyclical on without criticizing the encyclical specifically, but just writing an encyclical on the common home, taking care of of creatures, which we ought to do. But just writing that is this mentality that maybe I'm not saying this is the motive of the encyclical, but I'm just saying maybe this kind of paganistic mentality, this environmentalist mentality, as a pushback to that mechanistic AI mentality that everything is technological, but then nature does exist, but nature is God. This is where God is in everything. I remember we do a lot of things actually that are pagan. Um, without bad faith, knock on wood, it's from the Druids, right? Who believe that God was actually in the woods. But you do see a recuperation of this. So true religion is not the antidote. It's not what's countering the mechanistic mentality, but rather this vague spirit. And you mentioned New Age, this spiritualism, I like to call it, which is and it emphasizes freedom, which is really just the individual autonomy. If you go to actually the satanic temples about us, they talk about this extreme individualism, alluding to certain pagan elements, but this extreme individualism where you're not subject to anything. So
Yeah.
this extreme individualism, which is a freedom, basically do what you want. But again, if it's deterministic, which is a contradiction itself, tied to this paganistic view that no, God is not an independent being, but everything is God and that we are God. So that it's a very scary view. So actually, those who analyze entertainment and contemporary literature, you are seeing a spiritualist a spiritual revival, but of a dark nature. It's a Netflix series that coming up. It's evil becomes eye candy because of our fallen nature. And we're very fascinated by this evil, dark spirituality that's supposed to counter, our superficial view of mechanistic, so it's like one extreme battles another extreme without the religious truth, if you will. Like Chesterton said, you don't believe in truth, you end up believing in all other things. The proliferation of superstition also there is this, I think we realize that this deep desire of mystery of what transcends us, but it's just misplaced.
Well, we don't, and that's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Um, um, uh, the emergence of this echo spirituality, which is in many ways a kind of cult, huh?
Right.
And I don't mean that sense of cult and something so alien or strange, because it fills the halls of academia and you know you're a climate change denier, all that stuff. Um, um, it
Dogma.
is. I mean,
Dogma.
we're looking. Yeah, it's dogma, and we are disposed as human beings to seek something of a higher order. We are disposed as human beings toward the supernatural, and unfortunately, because we don't have the rich notion of the supernatural, we've never been. I mean, even within our own souls. I mean, in fact, uh, there's a certain respect in which my thoughts are a supernatural event, huh? If they're, you know, coming, yeah, um, uh, dealing with the spiritual soul. But yeah, so we retreat to the macabre, the perfidy of the strange and stranger things, huh? We that becomes our connection with what is supernatural because
Right.
we don't know the good supernatural.
Right.
Really, I mean, it's, and this nature mysticism that abounds, is just it's alarming. It is truly alarming. Um, I don't know if you want to get into that more because the
Well, I don't know
connection
if
you
you
made
wanted to
is
talk about
really strong.
the environmentalism
Yeah,
you refer to,
it's
but that's how I see environmentalism. I see it as very cultish. but I think you were kind of referring more to I think the more than the broad or the common view that people have of environmentalism, but we can get into that briefly if or however you want to take it.
Yeah, I'll do that quickly because when it comes to the environment, and here I'm uh, basing my thoughts on studying textbooks. I find it very rewarding and eye opening to look at the introductions and early chapters in textbooks in areas of science, like if you look at psychology textbooks, etc. It give economics. Uh, the introductions and early chapters gives you a sense of okay, this is where they are philosophically. More often than not, it's just ideologically. But so I did a couple of years ago look at a lot of textbooks. Basic environmental science, the studies of the environment sorts of textbooks, and what I learned was that there is a contest, so to speak, a struggle between two opposing views, the ecocentric and what they call the anthropocentric. Now, their use of anthropocentric isn't in a philosophical sense, neither is it uh, the ecocentric. But basically, this is the nature of that opposition in environmental studies. Um, Ecocentric. The things of the environment, animals, plants, minerals, etc., have a value which is equal to or greater than the value of human interests, human activities, and even human beings themselves. That's the ecocentric view. The anthropocentric view, this is the opposite of the on the spectrum there. Human interests, human activities, and human beings have a value greater than the things of the environment. Environmental things do not have any intrinsic value, and their value comes entirely from the value that human beings and activities assign to them, give to them. So there you can see the obvious opposition. The ecocentric view versus the anthropocentric view. The anthropocentric view, well, that's naughty and bad. The ecocentric view is the view you're going to get in this environmental textbook. Okay, environmental studies. It's a question of value. Ecocentric, the things of a value which is equal to or greater than that of human beings, and anthropocentric, we lord over the thing. Whatever value they have is what we assign to them, and that's that. Um, what they miss is a third option I call conservationism. And in conservationism, this is not in any of these textbooks. In conservationism, the things of the environment have intrinsic value, but human interests, human activities, and human beings have a value greater than the things of the environment.
Mhm.
Still, as we are interdependent beings, we depend upon others and we depend upon the environment, and the environment depends upon us. We have an obligation to be virtuous stewards of the environment. The human pursuit of happiness has greater value than the value of environmental things, but we cannot experience genuine happiness without being virtuous caretakers of the environment. Conservationism. It is the alternative to ecocentrism and anthropocentrism. However, there is so much confusion, it's even difficult. And I had a colleague who was very smart, an environmentalist, taught environmental studies. Um, and we used to have some wonderful discussions and debates on these matters. Um, um, I learned from his argumentation, because there is such confusion, and there is such confusion because it is cultish. It's a kind of and I put this in quotes, sanctified ideology. And environmentalism has become a kind of worshipful ideology. I mean, you can't put it any other way. And because of that, so much confusion. Let's just consider this, Raphael. Animal rights. I mean, there are all kinds of organizations. Animal rights has become just a given now. I mean,
Right.
the organizations like PETA and People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals and so on, they have it makes me wonder what exactly does that mean? Animal rights. Okay. Oh, you can't, the animals have rights. You can't abuse them. You can't uh, uh, just ignore their lives. The spotted owl has rights. So we've got to shut down the lumber industry. I don't know if you remember that case.
No.
Snail darters have rights. Got to shut it down, but here's the question. Do we have to ascribe rights to animals in order to be able to respect them? By my lights, that's a kind of anthropomorphizing the animal. I mean, what are rights? A human being is a locus of rights. We have a rationally conscious understanding of what a right is. We also have a rationally conscious understanding that rights bear responsibilities. Animals don't have that. Now, I am a lover of animals. I am very, very much. So I don't want to be misinterpreted here as, oh, he's anti-animal. No, no, no. But do we have to say that the dog has rights? Do we have to endow the dog with rights in order to be able to respect the dog? So we have to give it some kind of human quality. And in doing so, as far as I'm concerned, we're guilty of human chauvinism. To ascribe rights to the dog in order to be able to respect the dog, not abuse or mistreat the dog, take care of the dog, is a kind of human chauvinism. Why can't we respect the dog just as it is a dog? Why do we have to give it human-like traits, such as rights, in order to accomplish such respect? There is no need for that. I mean,
Right.
that's part of the confusion with this ecocentric view, and it's become such an ideological cult in a sense that people don't even think clearly. Aren't you, in a way, uh, it's kind of a projected anthropomorph? Aren't you, in a way, saying, okay, the only reason why we should respect the dog is because it's got a human-like trait and rights? Why can't we just respect it as a dog?
Right. Right.
By the way, the Christian metaphysical heritage um, recognizes you respect the animals, they have intrinsic value. You respect the animals given their essence for what they are as living things. Likewise with plants, nature in general. You respect them, you respect it for what it is in terms of the order and design, its very essence. And if you don't, you're not being you don't you're not fulfilling your obligation to be virtuous stewards, caretakers of the environment for the sake of your generation, for the sake of successive generations as well. Um, there is this issue, and it's not, I think, properly understood. It's another example of the way in which we simply cannot deal with nature as such. Consider, have you ever, I mean, really try this. Look up species. What is a species?
Hmm.
In the early 70s, we had the Endangered Species Act. It became a rush. We got to declare this thing, that thing, the other thing, an endangered species. Why? Because then they become protected, and you can get money if you protect them, et cetera, et cetera. Okay,
Right.
from the government. Okay, I was at a zoo once with when my kids were younger. I'm thinking was early 2000s, Raphael. And we came across this habitat, and it said red wolf endangered species. And this was a beautiful habitat. You kind of look down, and yeah, there, sure enough, there were a couple red wolves down there, and there was a sign which said endangered species. Now, clearly, the zoo had received money to develop build this habitat and so on for this, and it was a beautiful animal. There were I can't remember exactly how many, but there were quite a few down there in this habitat. Just beautiful, beautiful animals. Um, the red wolf is not a species. It's not a species. The gray wolf is not a species. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
A I learned and understand basic by a species if two members of and they have fertile offspring,
Right.
they're of the same species. But if you mate a horse with a donkey with an ass, okay, what do you get? The mule. The mule is sterile,
Right.
okay. The horse and the donkey are close species, but they're not the same species. If
Right.
they were, when you mate, you'd get a fertile offspring. Okay.
Right.
If you mate the red wolf with the white wolf, you get the pink wolf. No, I'm not really. I'm just. And if the pink wolf will be fertile,
Right.
okay. Um, they're not different species. If you just try to do a search, you'll get, and things have been changed and they flipped around. There's a move to restore the population of gray wolves out west in Montana, Wyoming, etc. And very successful. Yellowstone, um, um, the gray wolves, but the gray wolves are notorious for invading ranches, for getting cattle, attacking cattle or sheep or whatever. Okay, and unfortunately, they were just virtually exterminated in the 19th century. I mean, thousands, like almost like the American buffalo, thousands killed, and it's good to restore them, but they're not a species. The gray wolf is not a species. The red wolf, the gray wolf, etc. These are breeds, and for a while, the EPA did go to endangered breeds. Okay, now they talk about, and this is the latest, the subspecies. So you've got these animals which aren't a species, but they're subspecies, and whatever that is, I'm not really sure, because
Right.
they do say a subspecies can mate with others and so on and so forth. Okay, and have fertile offspring. The whole thing is a comedy show. It just doesn't make. It's not. It's not science. It's
Right.
politics. Okay,
Right. Right.
it's junk science. Junk science, politicized science is junk science, and that's what you have with so much environmentalism. We can go on in terms of, you know, the polar ice caps and they're shrinking and so on, and then we have the at the same time we have the um, uh, what is it, the forced core where they take it out of the ice and show these kinds of things that have happened before. All of this, it's it's not a logical, ordered science. Environmentalism. It's politicized to the point where what you're talking about is religious sentiments that are very, very touchy, very, very touchy. And this is exactly what we face now. And maybe, as you pointed out, part of this devotion to environmentalism is a reaction against a kind of crass mechanism which dominates the sciences.
No,
Um,
and I think what you were saying before, I think the basis of it, a lot of it is a faulty philosophy, which science has to be based on a good philosophy. Like the lack of the formal cause will blur because that is the foundation of species. Also, species has different definition, but definitely the formal cause of what a thing is. We have genus and species, and that could be tied into scientifically. The scientific notion is very much tied into the metaphysical notion of or the logical, genus and species. But without that, there's just this confusion, and it just becomes arbitrary according to politics. No, that's totally true. What I
yeah,
do find it
I,
fascinating is that with anthropocentric exceptionalism is attacked on two fronts. Basically, it's attacked by this AI post-humanist view and also by this environmentalist view, but it's always attacking man. So you do have anthropocentrism in modern philosophy, but you do exceptionalism, which is disordered with the we can say the absolutization of human reason. But then you have these contrary views with the posts, right? The postmodernism, post-Christian, and it comes down to being post-man. It's really trying to replace nature, but specifically man, with other natural things or with the artificial itself, which is fascinating. And you're seeing the cultural Marxist view here, which with this binary constantly at odds. This is the lens that the leftists today have it, the progressivists, as you would call them, have it today. The lens of this constant fight between the oppressor and oppressed, and now the oppressors have become man in general, not the biological sex man, but just mankind. So mankind has oppressed are the artificial realities, has oppressed all non-man natural entities, has oppressed everything. So really, man has been the oppressor. So the oppressed must rise up and fight against man. And the oppressed can be different, right? Different type of things. And really, through violent revolution, almost, um, or explicitly, to just wipe out man. And I think that's why you get terms like speciesist, which some people who are scared of AI or want like ethical committees are being accused of being specious, which is weird. I mean, of course you want you want what's best for humanity. You're not a speciesist like a racist, a speciesist. It's absurd. Elon Musk actually said I don't know if it was Hansen, one of his friends he was talking to. He expressed his concerns about AI, and kind of this environmentalist view, this diminishing of the value of man, and his friend called, who's also in that world, kind of called futurism, the futurists, and he called him, hey, stop being a speciesist. He told that to Elon Musk. So Elon Musk thought that was fascinating. But yeah, this whole futurism really can only be countered by natural law, and that infallibly interpreted by the Catholic magisterium. Because again, reason, because of our original sin, our reason is obfuscated, and we really need Catholicism. We need religion, true religion, to kind of help us infallibly interpret reason. So this is really the only anecdote society that we have. But I'll give you the last word. We'll end it at that because we're
well, I just want to say,
oh,
and I appreciate those insights very much. But if we don't buy into the welcoming a new species, we become, I guess, and based upon our metaphysical opposition to such a new species, we become, I guess, Christo fascist speciesist. Oh boy.
Well, that is a major insult, I guess.
Yeah, that'll
That's the
really
insult of the
do us in.
insult.
But it's been going on for so long now. Um, this kind of ideological environmentalism, this ecocentrism, to just to the max. Okay, I recall it was in the early '70s, and I believe I was a sophomore in college. Um, Noam Chomsky, a
Mhm.
linguist, I mean, that's how he earned his reputation. Chomsky. Yeah, and you can look this up. It's really something. Um, he came to my university and gave an open lecture and so on and I was young, probably, 18, 19, somewhere, maybe even just 18. But this was in the early 70, I think it was spring 71, but I'm not positive. Um, he gave a talk um, scaring us, and I was really frightened by this because he claimed in that talk that by the year 2000, we would be living in igloos, global freezing.
Hmm.
Chomsky,
That's
I
quite
mean,
cool.
was
Cool.
it
Yeah.
an environmentalist activist who was fear mongering regarding global freezing. And of course, part of it was we get, you know, uh, it's a question of energy and we've got to share, I mean, all that kind of stuff. That with the left typically. And then, you went from global freezing. Um, by the way, Eberhard at the same time, the population bomb. Okay, the population is growing. It's a bomb. It's going to, and this is what's going to, it's going to be part of the global freezing, and we'll be not just living, we'll be fighting over igloos because the population will be. I mean, the whole thing was bananas. So, as an undergraduate, a young undergraduate, I was just terrified. What are you going to do? Everything's falling apart. Throw the Vietnam War in. It was devastating, all of it. Ultimately, you just had to kind of drop out. And at that time, I didn't have a philosophical foundation to be able to deal with it. But as I look back in retrospect, people like Chomsky and the population bomb folks, as well, many others, they're never held accountable for this. This stuff did not happen as they predicted it at colleges and media centers across the nation. Time magazine, there's a cover, in fact, of Time magazine which warns from the early '70s, which warns of the global freezing. Um, they're never held accountable for it,
Mhm. Right.
unfortunately.
Right.
And so much of what they've done based on reputations and so on are just important figures in American culture, but just they're absolved from their mistakes because they are of the right political stripe.
Right.
It is concerning to say the least. I believe, as we switch from global freezing to global warming, now
Climate change.
nothing's going to be warming or freezing. It's just going to be climate change,
Yeah.
whatever the climate changes. Yes. Oh, no, no, no. You're thinking of weather. Weather changes quickly, but climate shifts, and so isn't climate is not the sum total of weather. Who's to say? You know, I just can't understand all of this. It's as bad as the animal. It's as confused as the animal rights issues, and so many of the other
It's not a question of
non-scientific.
understanding. It's just a question of affirming. It's a argument of authority. So it's funny. I'll end with this. I saw someone who have his shirt. It said a climate change, and it just had a picture of the four seasons. So, I guess it was just making fun of the climate. But
It's,
anyway, all right, well, we'll leave it at that because we almost 2 hours been a very fascinating discussion and
it has
thanks
been.
for
Thank you.
yeah, thanks for coming on. And yeah, stay tuned for more of these profound topics. And remember, make time for these topics because it's important to live according to these profound realities as opposed to watching reels all day and wasting your time. All right, well, God bless you all. Take care and don't be Christo-fascists, as Thomas said. Christo-fascist specious. All right. God bless you all.